They say to only bring what you can carry. So with the all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor, bring a lot. Like 3 dirt bikes, a few tents, an entire crew ready to make memories. A panoramic 24-inch display, and the confidence to push your limits. The all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor.
Always consult the owner's manual before off-road driving. Know your terrain and trail difficulty and use appropriate safety gear. Max payload varies based on accessories and vehicle configuration. See label on door jamb for carrying capacity of a specific vehicle. Always properly secure cargo.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Northern Kentucky University political scientist Michael Baranowski. I'm joined today by my conservative counterpart, Cincinnati area attorney Joey Ashbrook.
Hey, Mike, great to be with you.
Yeah, I am looking forward to getting to the stories we didn't have time for on our weekend show, starting with something that, well, is sort of a carryover from last week, if you will, because last week, Justin and Ken discussed the firing of the previous BLS head, but they kind of left it at that because they sort of had to. And as folks know, there was an uproar following President Trump's firing of Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner Erica McIntyre, I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, on August 1st. That followed the jobs report that showed slower than expected growth in July and downward revisions to the May and June job numbers. Now, the president claimed without any supporting evidence that the numbers had been, here's that word again from the weekend show, rigged to make him look bad. Now, this week, President Trump announced his nominee for BLS Commissioner, E.J. Antoni, who's currently the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. Antoni has been a longtime critic of how BLS collects their data. In fact, this week, he posted on X that there are better ways to collect, process, and disseminate data. That is the task for the next BLS commissioner, and only consistent delivery of accurate data in a timely manner will rebuild the trust that has been lost over the last several years. Now, Antoni earned his PhD in economics from Northern Illinois University in 2020, not that long ago, after which he worked at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, and then he joined Heritage. And a number of economists, really from across the ideological spectrum, have raised some concerns about Antoni's lack of experience. For instance, there's Kyle Pormaloo, who's a senior fellow at the right-wing American Enterprise Institute. He wrote on X, there are a lot of competent conservative economists that could do this job. EJ is not one of them. Okay, so Joey, what do you think about Trump choosing Antoni to run the BLS?
Well, if you want to shake up the bureaucracy, appointing people who have not developed their career within the larger apparatus is a wise move. And I've seen the uproar over this and the arguments that he's not qualified, but to run a department like that, I mean, if a Republican president appoints the chief economist of the Heritage Foundation, in my mind, that's well within the ambit of the bench that they might choose from. And having someone who's not a long-time academic swamp creature is itself consistent with the idea of shaking up the bureaucracy. So it makes sense to me. I don't have any problem with it.
I see that. Certainly, that's a reasonable argument. But I'm wondering if you would agree that there can be a balance because, of course, you want somebody who has the deep understanding of a lot of these issues. And oftentimes that sort of understanding comes with time. Now, of course, all of us, I remember when I was 5 years out from having my PhD, which Antoni is as well, I was convinced that I knew everything about pretty much everything at that point. And if you would have asked me after 15 or 20 years after having my PhD, I would look back and say, wow, I was both inexperienced and arrogant. And I don't think I'm unique in that. And so, I mean, there is that balance because you're right that over time, you tend to become more of a creature of the establishment, other things being equal. But also, there is something to be said for having experience and a deep understanding of some of these things, right?
Well, experience can be really helpful if it doesn't become your own inertia against doing things that need to be done. The head ultimately is going to make trajectory decisions related to the way the department operates. And if the president's fundamental belief is that the department needs to be shooken up and go in a different direction, he needs to appoint someone who is going to do that. And it looks like this is that type of an appointment, which is consistent with what the president does. And one of his main themes in American history is that we need to take up the centralized bureaucracy of our government to give it back to the people. Look, ultimately, whatever the Bureau does, it's going to be transparent and show its work. And people are going to be able to criticize and say why something is wrong. But fundamentally, what's going to be achieved by this is that if they change, to be blunt, the apparatus operates in a way right now, and with the numbers, that's more helpful for the liberal centralized interests. And if changes are made, they can be criticized on the way the methodology is going, but it's going to fix the problem that the institution is structurally used to benefit one side as opposed to another. And in our world in which labor political dynamics are changing, which is good for people, that's good for regular people, that our battle lines are not as entrenched and they're changing. That's good for regular people. If there's a change in the way ongoing data reporting is done, then I think that's good, representing the new world that we're living in. And as long as it's transparent, it's like with judges. The beauty of judicial opinions, you may not like what a conservative originalist judge does, but you can check their work. Read it. They write an opinion. They cite the authorities. Then you can criticize them for what they do. And the statistics and the methodologies of the Bureau are going to be transparent and people can criticize them. But the imprimatur of what they do, when they put something out and it comes with the imprimatur of the people's institution, it's going to be in a way that addresses the lesser angels of the imprimatur that has undermined the people's trust in the institution. And so the appointment to be able to achieve that objective makes a heck of a lot of sense to me.
Hey Ryan, that was a fast trip. It was like you teleported.
Yeah, just got in. I'll get all my expenses logged, I promise.
Oh, no, you're okay. SAP Concur uses advanced AI, so your expense report will practically write itself. Quite the breakthrough. It's like we've been teleported into the future.
All right.
So, just curious, would you give us written permission to convert your matter into energy patterns and reassemble you at, say, random travel destinations?
Margaret, are you building a teleporter?
No. Yes.
SAP Concur helps your business move forward faster. Learn more at concur.com.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
I guess people are going to get sick of me saying I'm torn on this. I feel like that's sort of my fate as a center-left person who used to be, on the right there with you and a bunch of others in another lifetime, is that on this I'm torn because, well, I wish, like with so many things, I wish President Trump had gone about this differently. I feel like it was entirely irresponsible to call BLS data rigged for political purposes. And I feel that's wrong. I feel that's damaging public trust. But I also believe that at bottom, there is a real problem. And I think both sides, economists from both sides will tell you there is a real problem. And the problem is that the agency has big issues with its methodology, not because it's rigged and Democrats, the past chair was trying to fix things to make Biden look better and Trump look worse. the big problem isn't rigging data. It's declining response rates from the surveys that BLS uses. For instance, the rate for the employer survey, that's the main source for the jobs report, that's dropped in the last decade from 61 to 43% response. And rates for the household survey, that's the basis for the unemployment, the labor force participation rate numbers. Over that same time, they've gone from 88 to 68%. And what that means is way more guesswork and then bigger revisions as new data comes in. And so the critique, that fundamental critique that Antonia's been making is absolutely right. But it just putting everything that goes in that, well, it's rigged if it doesn't benefit me. That to me is just the problem. But certainly on a substantive level, BLS has some issues. It did not feel to me like they were trying as hard as they should have to deal with those issues. And so in the end, I certainly hope you're right and that fundamental problem that is a data collection problem, not a political rigging problem, it won't be solved because this ties into a larger issue with declining trust in all sorts of institutions. But I certainly think it can be minimized. One thing I was wondering to get your opinion on is Antoni has called for suspending the monthly jobs reports and only issuing quarterly reports. And what that means is the reason why he's called for that, in my understanding, is that the quarterly reports are actually based on hard data, much more so than survey results. But certainly the business community and the financial community rely on those monthly job reports, knowing that there are going to be corrections. And I don't know, do you think that we're going to see a change that radical? Because certainly there are plenty of folks in the business community who the last thing they want is to do away with the monthly jobs reports, even for a few quarters.
Well, I thought I saw that he went in a different direction with that.
Oh, did he?
Afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So I'd be surprised. I would be surprised if they do away with the monthly reports because of people being used to it. But the dynamic, though, it's interesting. You explaining the difference between the quarterly reports and the monthly reports. If you do a reason to go away from the quarterly reports would be you reduce the ability, or the monthly reports would be you reduce the ability for variation that leaves the institution subject to the appearance of potential impropriety. So that, like, the suggestion of that itself in the political dynamic that we're in and people's being used to it, was met with a lot of heat. And I think he has since changed course on that suggestion. But it itself should be based in institutional credibility if the quarterly reports are better based on our data, because the manipulation of our institutions is a sophisticated, logical human thing, but is a colossal problem that much of the Trump era and his rise to meeting the moment in American history is combating. And it's hard for me to have any sensitivity to shakeup of our bureaucratic institutions because it's those statistics. I mean, if you twist the data's arm, you can get it to confess to anything. Anybody who's worked in statistics knows that as dynamics, but yet it's still useful for us to have them. And I think it's a real problem in restoring trust in institutions and doing it the right way, where it's not about politics. It's about giving us information so that we can order our lives. It's really about the people. It's not about the politicians. And I think if that's what you want the institutions to be, and I'm all for that, then this is an opportunity for us in the world that's changing in the Trump era to work together to build a better world. And having those segments of society, last time I was on the show, we talked about the media. It's a great opportunity if the media wants to, for media like broadcast news organizations to do what their job should be. It's healthy for the American experiment, for the American nation, for the American people. And the same with our institutions. So whatever he does, it's going to be transparent and people can criticize it. And if he's doing something, it should be publicly. People can have that debate and the exchange of ideas that we have. But I think a shakeup's a good thing. And it's going to be really hard for me to not say a shakeup almost anywhere. And the bureaucracy is not a good thing because it's operated with its own inertia for so long. that I think it's healthy.
Yeah, and I will have a lot more. I have a lot more sympathy for that argument than almost anyone else you're likely to find on the left, because that was the sort of argument that animated me politically for the first probably decade and a half or so, or maybe even 2 decades that I was politically active, I guess you could say. And so I get that argument in a way I think that a lot of my fellow Democrats don't, that there is an inherent bias of big government toward, well, the sort of things that Democrats want. And so I understand at sort of almost a visceral level what you're saying. But I also think there's oftentimes what happens is, even if one is right that there are certain segments of the federal government that are, I hate the word, but I'll use the Trumpian word, rigged or biased in certain ways, I guess, it's easy to then overgeneralize, saying, well, if they're doing it here and they're doing it, clearly everyone's against us in every way. And so you start from that assumption of bad faith that everyone is against you, and then work backwards from that to cherry pick evidence to demonstrate that sort of thing. And that certainly is a very real thing too. So I think there's that one big thing that the left doesn't understand about the right that you articulated and I, agreed with. But I also think there's that thing that the right doesn't really understand about itself and how it can kind of go overboard on this sort of just suspicion of everything involving anyone in government in any way. And that overkill can be a pretty significant problem in its own right. We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys, or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes, as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.